And welcome to the Filmstein Podcast, the podcast where we were challenged with trying to articulate a love for art and storytelling. Today I am joined by my 6 foot and 3.5 inches friend, Lucy.
Hello, everyone.
I'm glad everybody could join us today. Thank you very much for being here, because today we will be talking about Henry Koster's 1950 film, Harvey. I will just say right off the top, I didn't know there were 3 Harvey movies. But I'm happy to revisit Harvey. Harvey is one of these early films I saw when I was a bit younger and realized that older films don't have to suck. I'm still trying to figure that landscape out, though. It's different than today. So I'm happy to report back on Harvey that it is decent enough. It's pretty good. It's entirely too long. It's basically an episode of The Twilight Zone meets Full House. I don't know if it's just me or comes with the territory and is the charm of early cinema, but the performances are, of course, very theatrical, over the top, and are fun, but sometimes too much. I haven't seen a lot of James Stewart films, but he is excellent as Elwood. I love the level of vagueness and ambiguity and interpretation of Harvey. Anyone and everyone can probably find a lot in what Harvey represents. But I do enjoy how contained this film is and how all of these threads kind of fold in on one another. Even the smallest of threads, where Elwood showed a level of respect to the gatekeeper by giving him a respectful honorific of Mr., of course. I thought that was really cute because, earlier it was made a point that everybody just calls him by his first name. I can't remember what it was. But the running around, trying to get Harvey, trying to kind of get to the nut of how crazy Elwood is, trying to get the gnome, it just went on and on to kind of the same point that it lands with everyone. There's no ultimate climax outside of the doctor who owns the sanitarium, Dr. Chumley, trying to have some gain in the matter. And it just gets kind of weird. It's very quick. It's the very end of the movie. Harvey's going to stay with Dr. Chumley. He immediately regrets that decision. The whole Chumley angle is strange. I definitely have some thoughts on the representation of Harvey and how he's perceived in this world in Elwood. But I'm very curious how you feel about this 1950 classic.
I had never seen Harvey before or even heard of it. Never knew there was a film about an invisible 6-foot rabbit.
6 feet 3.5 inches.
Excuse me. There was a charming and endearing element to this movie that I really like. It has a pretty nice message about conformity and kindness. What is normal? What is sanity? And I like what you said about this being an episode of The Twilight Zone mixed with Full House. That's pretty funny. And there's a lot of comedic elements here that I also liked. The situational comedy with Vita's mix-up, the characters' reactions to everything and all their interactions with Elwood, and the absurdity of it all with Harvey. Yeah, Harvey is clearly a symbol here of some sort, and even though you say that anyone could find a representation or interpretation, I really had to use my brain juices here for what Harvey symbolized. Was it a coping mechanism? A trauma response? A symbol for rejection of conformity? But then we introduce him as this puka mythological creature of good or bad or mischievousness. I don't know. And it all felt conflicting to me. Maybe because I didn't find one representation. Just this introduction of this belief element seemed a bit odd to me. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that. I'm sure we'll dig into it. I also don't know how I felt about Elwood being an alcoholic. I know alcoholism was seen drastically different in the 40s and 50s to its perception today. Today is seen as a disease, right? Was it seen as a disease back then? I don't know. From any literature of the time, anyone who drank too much had a character flaw more than anything else. You were just a bad egg with a vice. But now there's all this science and how it affects brain function, and it's treated way differently than what it was then. So I'm unsure how I'm supposed to view Elwood here. But then again, I could be completely off, and he's not an alcoholic, but simply someone who enjoys drinking. And to him, drinking is something he does socially because he's a very social person. And I'm reading into the alcohol issue too much. But I'm with you here on the performances. But I liked how exaggerated the acting was. Something about a film being black and white justifies a lot of the overreacting and the extraness. And it's also a bit of a comedy, so I can see the acting, the performances being exaggerated anyways. That happens in comedy today. I'm thinking Jack Black. I also enjoyed the dialogue quite a bit. And I think it's one of my favorite things about older films. I love the language back then, the play on words, the accent that people had. When did we start losing that? I don't know. But it's just long and drawn out, and it just fits. I love it. There's some quaintness to this movie that I really enjoyed, but I'm with you on some of the weirdness of the Chumley angle. And I'm not in love with the ambiguity behind Harvey's existence. It seems a bit evasive, and I don't know if I didn't understand the point to Harvey, or if the writers just didn't have a point to Harvey.
Yeah, the way people used to speak, it's kind of funny, right? Where did that go? Where did that go in movies? And as we were watching this, I was thinking, man, you know who Elwood reminds me of a little bit? And just the way and the cadence and the manner of speaking. Trump. When Elwood would tell his stories and describe one thing or another, I just heard Trump constantly in the way he was talking. So maybe Trump's a old soul, I don't know. He's an old guy, and I'm sure his dad maybe spoke similarly, but as far as this interpretation deal and ambiguity of what Harvey is, what he represents, it does at face value, I think, feel just simply like family and people accepting weird loved ones. Because every family across probably all time, but especially now, has a weird kid in their family who does weird things. They like to wear black and they dye their hair black. They wear whatever, they're goth.
I love how that's your go-to.
That's my
weirdness.
go-to. But something else kind of dawned on me while watching this film. Now, you might have to hear me out a little bit.
Oh, no.
But Elwood and Harvey are, in fact, gay. They're a couple. And it rung true with me, especially because oftentimes when two old men are living with each other, have lived with each other for 40, 50 years, or, they're referred to as housemates a lot of the time. But their relationship is invisible to a lot of the world, except maybe the closest ones and the ones that have the biggest problem with them, like your sister Vita. She's the only one who can see Harvey because she's really the only one that's really privy on the relationship. And the only other person who can see Harvey is the bartender. And of course, bartenders mind their own business, but also this bartender is very friendly with Elwood, perhaps maybe a little more accepting. Because in that same scene, you also have the kind of balancing perspective of the man down the bar, disgusted by what he is experiencing. Elwood talking to an invisible thing, but in fact actually disgusted by the representation of these two gay men together at a bar, talking, pillow talking, sort of, right? And of course, 90% of people, 99% of people walk around in the world treating you like you are invisible. So they don't even acknowledge Elwood or Harvey because they are both invisible to, most of the world, except the people Vita kind of wrangle into this scenario, right? Myrtle doesn't care. Myrtle just wants to find a man, right? And Myrtle's told by Vita that Elwood and his problem is preventing her from finding a man. Elwood and his supposed problem scare Vita's friends away, right? Of course, you're kind of alluding to the fact that all analogies kind of break down over time. They're only good in a sentence or two, but when you start to kind of unpack them, they don't hold up. It's one of the kind of dangerous uses of the analogy in storytelling. You got to be confident in how you use it. Otherwise, you may use it sloppily or rely on it a little too much and develop something a little messy.
Yeah, lose its true intention.
So, of course, there's actually a literal invisible creature. And I think it does kind of lose itself a little bit because that's when Dr. Chumley gets super involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, this is weird. When the obvious crux is just someone accepting a loved one for who they are. But we have Chumley in the puka thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're just awkward.
Unless puka was a slang or slur for something back in the day that I'm unaware of.
Sure, maybe there's something to that in along the lines of queer or free-spirited. Maybe. I think there probably are a lot of ways to read Harvey just because it's a somewhat level 1 study of someone's mental health. Because obviously Elwood is actually somewhat ill. If he can see a 6'3.5" foot rabbit, I wouldn't go to sleep at night if I was Elwood, you know? That portrait of them in his office it's pretty terrifying.
That didn't let me go to sleep at night.
I was afraid of the Easter Bunny when I was young, and this would have done some more damage.
Yeah, when you said anyone can find a representation of Harvey's symbolism, I didn't quite think that's where we were headed, with Elwood and Harvey being lovers, partners. But I'm not mad at it, because one of the things that stuck out to me in the film, as far as performances go, is Elwood's interactions with Harvey and how he led him everywhere. He pushed him everywhere. He kind of hugged him into doors and stuff. Very touchy.
Very hands-on.
And to me, that was just, okay, yeah, they're just exaggerating that there's an invisible rabbit here. And the portrait itself. Who has a portrait with
their best friend?
A friend.
Yeah. Any friend.
Drawn portrait, not a picture. A sit down and let's get painted together kind of picture. So I'm not mad at it here whatsoever. But you're right. We start introducing the puka element and Chumley. I guess I took Harvey's interpretation to be more of a coping mechanism to their mother dying. Elwood and Vita's mother, that is. Because most of the time when we're introduced to imaginary friends, invisible creatures, is with children. And it's with children who are going through something. And children don't have the coping mechanisms that adults have. So it A, made me feel like something was wrong with Elwood. And B, Harvey just represents anyone with issues. And that would kind of explain the Chumley route. He's having issues with his wife. He wishes he was away in an island somewhere with a girl not talking to him. So obviously, the wife is the issue, talking too much to him. I don't know. But then, like you said, we introduce the puka element and my theory just goes not out the window, but it's not solidified.
No, that's an excellent point. And it's just another angle of the analogy kind of breaking down in a different direction, because Harvey is often the one kind of guiding Elwood to the bar. And then Harvey starts to take on this representation of this cope that Vita, someone who's close to Elwood, would notice, right? You've been drinking a lot lately. Maybe you should get some help. Because similar to anyone's relationship being invisible to the wider world, Elwood's relationship with alcohol, his problem, would also be invisible to the rest of the world, much like Harvey. And just like at the bar, the bartender, he's the man who doesn't spill the beans. You bring your mistress to the bar, he's quiet, Comes with the code of being a bartender. But the man on the other side of the bar sees Elwood for who he really is. A drunkard, right? And so he's just like, it's at, what time in the morning and you're plastered, maybe that guy is seeing himself in Elwood. And that could actually help maybe drive the analogy a little further, because I don't know if a gay couple is driving Vita's friends away. I don't know what kind of tolerance people might have in the 1950s. I don't know. But Elwood coming home drunk out of his mind could easily drive people away.
Yes. But then we make Elwood so nice, so polite.
Of course, he's a great guy with this serious problem.
And that's one of the things I most enjoy about him, how he uses kindness as a philosophy, right? He says, I always have a wonderful time wherever I am, whomever I'm with. And that's why I bring up the ideology behind the drinking, because those two ideas don't usually mix. Alcohol is not represented this way in film.
Yeah, it's a surprising read of the movie and Harvey. And the film is so lighthearted and funny that it's kind of hard to, I guess, take it very serious.
Yeah, it really downplays any of the seriousness.
Yeah, Harvey representing this kind of coping mechanism could also help explain Vita occasionally seeing him.
Yes.
Because Vita occasionally partakes in getting blackout drunk. Similar with Dr. Chumley, because he's unhappy at home. He wants some peace and quiet, I guess.
But no matter what Harvey represents, I really enjoy that this is something comforting to Elwood, and just how gentle it keeps him throughout anything that's going on in his life. How did you feel about Myrtle and how she found love with the institution bodyguard? I don't know what you call him.
He's one of the big guys that comes and shuts the crazies up.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. It's cute. It's really contained, though. And that's what I mean by the cuteness, is that how contained this film is. All these threads end up tied up with one another. Elwood is preventing Myrtle from finding love. She not only finds love, but she finds love because of Elwood. Great tie. I don't love who she's, now in love with or, fascinated with.
Yeah, because I just thought it was odd that her mom just came home explaining about this man that basically abused her, got her naked, put her on meds, made her take a shower. I don't know what he did. And then she falls in love with him. It's like,
it turns out Myrtle's a little bit of a freak. She got excited. And we have to remember, this is not a drama. These aren't characters, right? They are nothing but loose ends of storytelling to interlace with each other and just complete the picture. And it does a wonderful job in it outside of the characterization. How it happens is wonderful. The meat of their dynamic, Myrtle and Wilson, I think is supposed to just be a little bit funny. And I did want to say that the most recent remake of Harvey has Leslie Nielsen in it. And after finding that out, that makes a lot of sense, because you can see the kind of potential of wordplay in this film, the 1950 one. So seeing a Leslie Nielsen adaptation is almost natural. I can see that happening in the boardroom, being like, listen, Harvey, Leslie Nielsen. And then they, got $10 million to make it happen.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point, because that's some of my favorite parts of the film. I think one of the ladies that Aunt Vita and Myrtle are entertaining asks Vita, does Elwood see anyone these days? And then Vita's like, well, he sees somebody these days. And the whole interaction with the nurse and Dr. Sanderson, there's a lot of play on words there. All their interactions are hilarious. It's so witty. It's so funny. I also liked when Aunt Vita was talking to the judge on the phone and she started whispering because Elwood came in. And then the judge started whispering on his end. But probably the funniest part, and it just cracked me up, was when again, Aunt Vida and Myrtle were entertaining some ladies, and they had a lady singing, and she was singing this song where she sang hop hop hippity hop and started like hopping around like a rabbit, and Aunt Vida just got wide-eyed and started looking around. I mean, it was hilarious watching her watch the lady, and no one else cared. Everyone was enjoying the entertainment, enjoying the song, whatever, but Aunt Vida's reaction just killed me. It cracked me up. Like, is anyone not noticing that this weird lady is hopping around like a rabbit? This movie was in black and white. My two biggest comparisons to black and white films that I've seen are the 1957 film 12 Angry Men, which is a fantastic film, and the 1962 film To Kill a Mockingbird, which is not as good. So I'm still learning to visually analyze black and white film, and I just liked how Harvey looked. We didn't get to focus too much on the sets, right? It was more character driven than anything. But comparing it to Kill a Mockingbird, Mockingbird felt more washed out than Harvey. And I'm just curious if you got any of the same feelings.
No, I totally feel you. It kind of reminds me of the very limited color palette of something like the original Nintendo with its 8-bit color. And because I'm a little bit more familiar with the original Nintendo over black and white films, I can see the kind of spectrum of beauty there, even though there's very limited resources, right? And there's definitely a difference between Harvey and something like To Kill a Mockingbird and 12 Angry Men. I feel like the contrast in 12 Angry Men, or however colors were used in that kind of sense of with black and white, they are kind of radically different for all being, black and white monochromatic. And I'm sure it comes down to lighting still and even texture of the fabrics, because I know actors would wear wild colors to get different hues of grays and blacks. On set, they would not match at all, but they were trying to, get some level of contrast and sensibility for what they were trying to make.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
But something like To Kill a Mockingbird, it is very desaturated, even for black and white. And maybe because there was such an absence of color in the early days of filmmaking, obviously, there was this obvious fixation on lighting. And so maybe that's what we're noticing is the variations in lighting and who was, the king of lighting at the time.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those situations where you need to get clever with how you play with the color and the lighting, where there was more to worry about when color was implemented.
Yeah, because another big focus of black and white, I would imagine, is composition, because it stands out a little bit more.
And again, I need to see more black and white films. I can probably count the ones I've seen throughout my entire life on my hands, and the ones I remember on one hand.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for watching Harvey with me and talking about it here today.
You're welcome.
Do you have a budget guess?
I'm going with $2 million, but don't ask me if that's today's money, then money. How much was $2 million in the 50s? I have no idea how far that took you. I'm not even sure if this is the oldest movie we've covered. It's an hour and 44 minutes. I don't know anything on how much making a film costs with today's equipment versus 1950s equipment. I really don't know.
Well, it says here that it was about 1.3 million.
Maybe I do know.
And we don't know about the box office. But over on Letterboxd, with 50,000 people, they weighed in at a 4.0.
50,000? That's nothing. 4.0? That's pretty high. I'm probably going to stick with a 2.5 for this film. I don't think I would watch it again. Besides its comedic elements, I didn't get much else from the film. I had a fun time watching it, but that was about it. Nothing extra for me here. I don't think I'd recommend this film to anybody unless they were more interested in film or classics.
Or like old symbolism, what it might represent.
But maybe not my family or friends who aren't interested in film critique of any way. But it still gets a 2.5 because it is a very concise story. It does have its fun elements. I like how you said that it was very contained, even with the Myrtle plot of her falling in love with Wilson.
Even the gatekeeper
plot.
Yeah,
even the gatekeeper plot. Everything just intertwines with each other, and it's really neat. I do like how charming it is. I do like the overall message, but nothing there to really wow me.
No, I completely agree. I like the ambiguity of what Harvey could represent. I think it's a masterful case of an analogy being taken in multiple ways, but not forgetting to have fun with the presented rules to drive the movie in some direction. It doesn't take itself too serious.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not serious enough. I wish it was a little weirder. I love that you can potentially pull a unspoken gay relationship out of this and someone coping with traumatic events. And the analogy supports one or the other, yet breaks down and supports the other in the other direction. There's something really charming about that, no doubt. The containedness is always a very attractive point. I don't know why I like that so much, and James Stewart's performance is great. So I think I'm with you with a 2.5 out of 5 too. I was kind of leaning towards a 2 just because of how soft the movie is, how full housey it is. But there's some gas here. It's still a little long. I would have chopped 30 minutes off this and got to the exact same point. I know one of the remakes is just about an hour long, which I think totally makes sense. But yeah, man, thank you very much again, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Filmistines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Wednesday and Friday on all of our free feeds with double feature episodes. Go check out our new abridged series where we watch a film and immediately go record to capture some raw thoughts. Our next episode will be on Donnie Darko. Please look forward to that episode. That should be an interesting talk. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come subscribe. Come request a movie. We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives on the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines. And follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is the Filmistines, signing off.